Welcome back to Tons 2 Cents, where we talk GovCon, growth, and all the messy real world changes in between. Today's episode is called Data Driven Pivots, and we're going to get into what happens when the rate of change blows past traditional change management models and what it takes for organizations and people to actually pivot, which is my word du jour of the year, instead of just rebranding the status quo. My guest is the soon to be retired Colonel Kris Saling, advisor for people experience and technology at Manpower and Reserve Affairs for the U.S. Army, where she led the strategy for efforts like multi-agentic Ask Army platform and advised on integrating new tech and business practices to 1.1 million persons workforce. She's also the author of a data driven talent management and a practical guide to using analytics to building engaging, performing teams. Kris, welcome to the show and tell our intellectual listeners a little bit about yourself.
Oh, goodness. Where do I start? I think, yeah, I've spent about the last 10 years in the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs and the G1. So, all things Army people, trying to figure out how to make our processes more efficient, how to integrate best practices and technology from industry, and figure out how to better serve our soldiers and our civilians. So, it's awesome work. It's work I never really anticipated getting into, but I've absolutely adored the opportunities I've had, but I'm also excited to see what happens next as I check myself out of the Army after, wow, that's going to be 25 years. It's a lot of service
It's
time.
crazy. It's crazy how time flies, right? You're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it seemed like just yesterday. And then some days it seems like it was a long time ago, too.
Yes. Sometimes, I mean, what are we at now? We're still in the middle of January, and it's like, it's already been a long
It's
year.
already been a long year. Exactly, right? It's only
Mhm.
January 13th, 2026.
Mhm.
But before we get into like the big topics here today, it's cold out on the East Coast. It's not so bad here in Texas. But you've had what you like to call the Brady retirement orders more than just once, and
Mhm.
now you've gone public on LinkedIn, that you're ready to leave this time. And I would almost say it's the Aaron Rodgers retirement approach too.
Yeah.
But yeah, but when your friends and your family heard that, that update, what was the funniest reaction or story that made you think, "Yep, I'm really at a pivot point right now."
A lot of it is just convincing people I'm actually going to leave because,
They don't
I
believe
mean,
you.
I come out there and say, obviously this is my third time having retirement orders in hand, and they're just like, yeah, okay. What's the deal this time? What are you bartering for? It's like, no, I'm not really bartering for anything else this time. No, really, what are they going to give you? I was like, come on, guys. No, I'm this time I'm actually stepping out. No, come on, what's the deal? It's just a complete, I did this to myself. It's a complete lack of trust that I'm actually going to, go through the regular retirement process. Um, my family kind of looks at it. They're excited about it, but they're also suspicious. They're just like, okay, are you going to pull another? And we call it the Brady
Right.
retirement because it's like, oh, here I go, here I go, here I go. Oh, just kidding, I'm back.
Yeah. And I get it too, right? Because when you enjoy what you do and you're able to kind of inspire and also do some like interesting things, it's hard to say, okay, I'm gonna like there's never a good time to bow out or
Mhm.
extract yourself
It's
from
really
all of that.
hard. I mean, just like you said, when you really love what you do, it's like the hardest part is not starting new projects. Because that to me is like, oh, I really
So
am gonna
easy.
have to pivot.
Yeah.
But I could also do this thing. No, no, no. I don't have time to do this thing. But there's this project I really want to do.
Yeah, exactly. I am like always the creator of new projects.
Mhm,
I'm always in the middle of like three or four different things.
mhm.
Um, the hardest part for me is like finish and like end something. I'm ready to like I love to hand off stuff to people. I'm not an O&M kind of person, so yeah,
Mhm.
like that would be pure purgatory. Um,
I feel that.
could not do. Yeah. So let's just dive into our discussion here today with our first segment, from orders to innovation. And I want to start with your story because your career is basically a case study on pivoting. You've gone from traditional Army roles into people analytics, then to innovation cells, recruiting innovation, and now advising on people experiencing and tech at like this enterprise level. That's not a straight path, and a lot of us don't have straight paths. But I like to think of it being a series of like intentional pivots. So walk us through some of the pivot points, and where did you realize, okay, I'm not just doing like human resources, but I'm actually here to kind of rethink how the whole system works.
Hmm. It's been a really interesting journey, and as I've gone through it, I've done all these little pivots, but like you said, they're kind of intentional pivots.
Mhm.
And I've walked into various experiences thinking I know absolutely nothing about them, and then realizing that I have a lot of transferable skills that I never even realized I had. I mean, this is kind of goes back to God, back to the very beginning. I first entered the Army as a combat engineer. Did not expect to do that. I had actually wanted to go into medicine, but ended up just really falling in love with all things service. I wanted to actually, at the time, I wanted to commission and be a tanker, but they weren't letting women into armor branch
Oh,
at the time. But I'm just like, come on, tanks. Where else can
so
I go?
cool.
Yeah. I'm like, where else can I go, blow things up and play with heavy equipment? Oh, engineers. So I went that route for a while and then ended up going to grad school. I was going to go to grad school and then teach at West Point for a while. And I studied
Nice.
complexity science, which totally zing out of the way of doing organic chemistry and pre-med. I had studied a little bit of advanced mathematics and operations research when I was in grad school and just fell into this. But I blame having read Jurassic Park too many times. I wanted to be Ian
Oh,
Malcolm and figure out chaos mathematics, so that's what I went to study. And then after teaching, that turned into network analysis and doing counterterrorism, counter threat finance for Special Operations Command Pacific and Indo-PACOM, which just
okay.
that was my jam. I was, we were
Yeah.
using complex mathematics to catch bad guys, and it was extremely valuable work. So I'm sitting there going, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is my jam. I'm going to go to Joint Staff. And my branch goes, no, you're not doing back-to-back joint jobs. We're not going to do it. This will ruin your career. We're going to send you to Army staff instead of joint staff. I was like, okay, great. Maybe Army staff has something like this. Oh, no, no, you're going to the G1. You're going to Army personnel. And I was like, I,
What?
I don't know anything about personnel. I don't know anything
Excuse
about
me?
HR. So they dropped me in the middle of this. This is 2016. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I don't know how to do any of
Yeah.
this. I don't know how any of these processes work. Maybe they have some data. Maybe I can do some forecasting. Let me learn about what we can do in this space. And I realized they had data per se, but they really had these suites of interconnected spreadsheets. I'm like, oh, this is clunky.
Oh,
And we can build some stuff here. And I started wandering around, started talking to people, started pulling together this little coalition of the willing. And it's like, okay, I've got some folks here that have an analytic environment I can use. I've got some folks here with data. I've got other folks with data. We have questions to, okay, let's start pulling this all together. And I started reaching out to academia and industry, just, looking at some of the problems that we had within the Army and within other services. And it turns out everybody's kind of asking the same questions. And I was like,
oh,
we can build off this. We can build a capability. We started building the capability that became Army People Analytics. But one of the things I realized, it's like, oh yeah, I've been working with special operations for a while. So I take, these teams, I put together these teams, we do an insertion and we build partner capacity. So what I ended up doing basically was building a team of data scientists and data experts, getting inserted into the people enterprise and building capacity. So I was able to start basically a digital insurgency. All of these
wow.
different things kind of came together. It's like all these different experiences. And we built network analysis and forecasting very similar to what we were doing on the threat side, only now it was used for positive growth, for turnover, for succession planning, for a lot of the things we were doing internal to the space.
Yeah. And that was really a good timing, if I'm following your timing right, when data analytics became very hot. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, there's different agencies and offices and branches are creating the chief data what is it, chief data analysts and officers, the
Mm-hmm.
CDOs. Whereas before, data was just kind of like data, right? Like it just kind of sat there. There was people weren't really, digesting it and ingesting it and doing all the things with data. So
Oh yeah.
you kind of got on the front end of that. But I love your origin story because I think that's one of the reasons why you and I get along so well is that I'm a chemist. I
Hmm.
started off in chemistry and political science, and you're gonna have to teach me sometime about
Hmm.
like how mathematics actually relates to like real life because I don't get it. Like math to me is just no thanks. Like chemists use calculators and like we look at things from a very different viewpoint. So math not my strong point, but
That's okay.
people,
We've
I'm
got
gonna
AI in our pockets right now. It's like, let
that's
alone all
right. I
the
don't
things
need to
we
know
can
that
say.
right now, which is great. Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking about what could I have possibly done and how much smarter or how much more I could have learned if we had this back in the early 90s when I was
Hmm.
in college because I'm just like, oh my God, like life would I would have understood things so much better. Life would have been so much easier.
Hmm.
I could at least gotten to point A to point B so much quicker than, the painful approach that we had back then. So
Oh yeah, no, I use AI a lot to create study plans for myself. So I'm studying for a couple certifications coming up, and I'm like, okay, I have this time. This is my target for completion.
yep.
Come up with a study plan for me where I want to spend like a couple hours, 2 3 nights a week studying for this thing. Oh, okay, here's your blocks,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it creates my schedule, and I'm like, okay, that's
It
one thing
keeps
I
you
don't
honest.
really have to
Yeah,
think about.
it is the best unpaid intern, isn't it?
Oh
I'm
yeah,
just like, oh my
completely.
God, it's like my personal assistant. It's like, yes,
Mhm.
thank you so much for keeping me on schedule here.
Yes, help me
So
with my travel itinerary. It's
right, right, exactly. So I want to kind of pivot
Mhm.
and talk about our next segment about when change outruns the playbook. And you and I have both watched the rate of change like we've seen within our own lifetime, and it's going to even go faster now from this is a big initiative to if you blink and if you pause, you're totally obsolete.
Mhm.
And even Cotter is revisiting the change model, which tells me, which tells you how fast the ground is shifting. And so, from your vantage point, leading digital transformation and AI in the Army HR, where does the like classic linear change management playbook kind of break down? And what does a more adaptive, reality based version of
Mhm.
change kind of look like in practice?
I love this problem set because there's so many different directions we can go
Yeah,
with it. I mean, the Army itself and most of the federal government it's built on a very industrial model. It's built on classic change models, but it's almost assembly line where it's like,
okay.
okay, here's our complete product. Here's going to be 5 years out, and then we're going to build this, and build this for some kind of known state. And that's where it totally breaks down. I mean, nobody anticipated November 2022, and all of a sudden we got ChatGPT exploding. Everybody's
Yeah.
got AI that they can access from their phone. Up until then, that was the domain of the nerds. And we would sit there and say, okay, here's my advanced mathematics, here's my probabilistic design, here's my AI algorithms. Oh, now everybody has it. Now I've got to teach everybody the nuts and bolts of, basic data 101, AI
Hmm.
101. And it's like, I look back at when they first fielded just cars. And it's like, okay, you've got a few people driving, you got a few people doing this. It's not a
Yeah.
real big deal. It's these front runners. Oh no, everybody's driving. We need traffic laws and rules of the road and conduct to make
Seatbelts
sure.
and
Yeah,
safety signs and yeah.
right. So that's kind of where we are with yeah, as fast as these change are going. And change is basically democratized. It's all over the
Hmm.
place. And for me as a complexity scientist, I love it because we have these very complex systems out there and we're seeing emergent behaviors. We're
Hmm.
seeing people creating tools for just about anything possible. I mean, you see all these random trends going on with AI where everybody's, turning themselves into um, the one I think of is like the pictures that everybody's creating of themselves in the glittery jumpsuit, like around Christmas
Oh, the
time.
Christmas photos. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the
I was just like, okay, nobody anticipated that. That's interesting. But now we're generating more visual AI products. Um, but a lot of it too turns into a reflection on how we actually teach people to adapt to change. It's no longer end to end, it's continuous. So we start looking at, what are the foundations? What are the base layers? What do I need to give people as far as skills, not to train them for some kind of known solution, but to figure out how to better pivot? How do I make my talent more adaptable so that when I do field a new thing, yes, it's a surprise, but our system can recover more quickly. We can flex instead of having to stop and turn this very, very big ship.
Yeah, that to people like you and me, this is exciting,
Hmm.
right? Because it's like, oh my God, we're thinking about the possibilities that are out there. If you reverse that from the mindset of people who sit in certain functional roles or have come up through, understanding a system and a change management process looking a certain way, it's got to be god awful, like the fear, the anxiety, the terror. Like, how do you kind of like offset that so that you know I I'm of the mindset that I always move very quickly. I think
Hmm.
quickly, I respond quickly, I can pivot, I can think on my feet, but that I know that doesn't make everybody comfortable. So, because I've internalized that and know that, I've taken a lot of personality tests. It's like the Myers Briggs,
Hmm.
like I know what my Clifton strengths are, and because I know what my strengths are, I have learned to adapt my approach to other people so that they also feel comfortable. Like,
Hmm.
how do we make those who are maybe not so much, resistant, but are just kind of uncomfortable or uncertain about the pace
Hmm.
of change or the new method of change?
I think all of us to some degree have uncertainty when it comes to change. I mean, it's like I'm very excited about change in technology, but when like our trash service changes the day they're picking up the trash, that's like one thing I've got to think about. It's like, oh, it's not Wednesday anymore, it's Thursday. Why did they do this to me? So it's
Yeah.
like that's the equivalent of what we're doing in a lot of ways for people doing their work. Now, our work happens to be managing change, so that's exciting, but it's still there's a degree of certainty to that for us because we know we're going to be teaching organizations doing new kind of startup type projects. There's a framework underneath that is less ambiguous than the technology. So that is kind of what we need to do for organizations is to find the underlying framework that gives people some degree of certainty while we're changing everything else.
Okay.
Um, for us, a lot of times, like if we're in some kind of a rapid change environment and I can't tell people what's going to happen next, what I do is not try to instill a false degree of certainty with them, but I give them certainty of communication. We're going to have some kind of routine touch point where I'm going to tell you what I know. So you know that every so often we're going to meet, we're going to talk about this particular topic, you're going to get what I know. So that is something at least they can kind of anchor for certainty. Um, from on top of that, the hard part is, figuring out how to get people accustomed to the lack of certainty everywhere else. I
Okay.
mean, I have the same thing when I'm explaining it to a lot of folks on our projects right now. On the contracting side, we get beat up a lot because we're coming in saying, "Hey, we're doing this agile." Well, when are you replacing this code, and what are the deliverables on? We don't know yet.
Right.
And they're sitting there going, "Wait, you're contracting for this, and you don't know what it is?" I'm like, I've got to do it in chunks because once we implement part one, we've got a menu of options on what part two is going to look like. We don't know which
Hmm.
one it's going to be until we see how part one does, and then it's a bunch of if then statements. Um, kind of building the underlying certainty part is like, okay, right here is my decision point. It's conditions based. I'm going to keep you updated weekly on how close we are to that decision. So it's like, then you'll know, and we'll give them enough lead time. But yeah, no, I've got to kind of pull people back and say, we're making new decisions at each of these milestones. It's not going to be certain, but what I can do is build in a schedule where you'll understand and where you get the warning signs that we're going to make a
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah. I think this has always been kind of one of the underlying principles of um, this approach is, and it's more relevant now, is you have to have a very good foundation to begin with and a
Mhm.
methodology that you've thought through. And if anything, I feel like I'm a broken record, is thinking strategic and being strategic about your approach and having a methodology that you can follow or lean on is, I think, even more critical
Mhm.
now than it ever has been before. It's always been important, but I think we're starting to kind of see, some of the challenges when shit like that isn't in place. So
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. So let's kind of continue this conversation, and I want to like build on our conversation about pivot ready talent systems.
Mhm.
And you've written and published on like treating talent systems as adaptive, complex systems instead of a very rigid pipeline.
Mhm.
And you've been the chief data analytics officer for the Army Talent Management Task Force. In other words, you've lived this to like this huge scale. So, for our intellectuals who are listening who don't live in people analytics every day, what does a pivot ready talent system actually look like compared to the rigid point to point systems that most of us
Mhm.
kind of grew up in?
Well, one of the things we've tried to do is kind of take the old system where you were classified by your grade and your whatever your job category was, and turn
Hmm.
that on its head. Because what we did before, before we had large amounts of data to work with, in military branches, we'd say, here's your branch and here's your grade. And the civilian side, here's your job category or your job classification, job family, and your grade. We're going to make all these assumptions about what you can actually do. But because we package all these assumptions, we start treating people as interchangeable. So instead, let's not take the top level and make assumptions on what's underneath. Let's do assessments, let's do skills inventories, and figure out kind of what the basic ingredients of people are, so that we can say, okay, here's your basic ingredients. Here's all these different roles I have. You match about 75% of this one, 85% of this one, 25% of this one. Oh, I have this new emerging thing. Well, instead of having to create um, a completely new branch or MOS to put people in, I can instead say, well, here's all the different skills in this role. I've got these three people. They might not be anywhere near what this particular category is, but they've got most of the skills, and I can do a very quick upskill to get them the rest of the way. That gives us kind of, I mean, I use a pantry example a lot. So it's like you're looking in your pantry. If you've got raw ingredients and you kind of understand what you've got in there in the raw ingredients, you can make
Yeah,
bread, you can make pasta, you can make pizza dough,
cookies,
you can make all kinds of different things, mostly the same ingredients.
right?
Instead of, stocking the pre-made everything, then you have fewer options.
Yeah, I love that analogy because I think I'm a cook, but I like to bake also too. And so yeah, it is kind of like making a ratatouille of
Mhm,
like whatever you have available. And I personally like the new model because it focuses more on skills, capabilities, and qualifications than
mhm,
the traditional roles. And I know that when we work with customers on understanding um, what the government needs. Some government customers are still very rigid in that, like I need someone that has this job title and this level of security and this education. And, those are areas where I think in the draft stage is really important for the industry to have conversations with the
mhm,
customer, and that based on your scope of work, based on, like the technology and the advances and like the solutions and the approach, we may want to revisit some of the skills that you're looking for because, like not every position requires a PMP, right?
right,
But like there are certain elements that a PMP has that you might want. A good
mhm,
communicator, someone who is a good planner, different things like that. So I always like to talk to people about like what are the skill sets that you need in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish, instead of like trying to pigeonhole people into like these swim lane of like different titles, which
mhm.
drives me crazy, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because what we do is we take these very multi-talented people who have skills all over the place, and we put them into a job description, and it's like you force
Hmm.
them into the mold, and then you cut off anything that doesn't have to do with the job description you're in. You just characterize them by the job when they've really got all of these other skills. So, I mean, kind of keeping those inventories or at least being open to like, hey, we need to figure out how many people are talented in these other things on top of what they're doing just in their particular role. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, I think it's not only good for the organization to kind of think and switch to this type of like a model, but, I'm not a touchy-feely HR kind of person. I'm an HR administrative nightmare. I've gone on record as saying that many, many a times. Hence why I own my own business. But I think from an employee staff perspective, that's got to be a much more rewarding approach because now they can feel like they're not stuck in a position, or there's an opportunity for them to, really kind of explore, do I grow and promote vertically, or can I do
Mhm.
that horizontally now too, right? So are you seeing, a higher level of like satisfaction from like the staff and the employees in particular?
Oh, yeah. Anytime we implement things that give people more agency and autonomy, it's
Yeah.
not dichotomous with selfless service. They can choose how they're serving, where what skills they're bringing to the table, and that I mean, the more value and the more impact people can have, they can find their way to that impact, and we get better retention, we get better job satisfaction. Um, we kind of look at it like I use Waze as a model for how we're
Mhm.
doing our talent journeys. And it's like, okay, people are using this tool to get from point A to wherever they're going, but they're trading their data um, in exchange for having more information on the best way to get there. If I set up my talent systems like that, I want people contributing more data about what they're interested in, what they're capable of, so that I can help them get wherever it is they're going. And I get to be less prescriptive about where they're going, but I get to see, okay, here's kind of the trend. Here's the more desirable positions. Here's where I'm lacking interest in positions, even if I'm not
Right.
lacking capability. Let me drop some incentives on those positions to make sure I can lure more of the right people over to these positions that might be less popular for whatever reason. It
Yeah.
gives us a lot of feedback loops also, so we can get in there and say, okay, everybody's interested in this. Let's go and poke at the ones who aren't, and just try and get an actual read on why, instead of doing a generic retention operation.
Yeah. So, in addition to that, is the professional development and training aspect of it kind of keeping up too? Like, I think that that would be something that would be huge, especially
Mhm.
for someone who's looking to upskill, into either a new technology area or something that maybe they, would benefit them to kind of along their journey.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're trying to do with these new systems. I mean, because we have the Army especially offers tons of benefits. We
Yeah.
have credentialing assistance and tuition assistance for our soldiers. They have GI Bills. They have all of these different education opportunities. We get, the Coursera's of the world, digital
Yeah.
university, all of these other things. A lot of federal government agencies have them, but people look at them as like, okay, that's a perk. Great, I'll get to that when I have time. Instead of seeing it as a stepping stone from where they are to their next career goal. If we can outline that, kind of make the match between the different courses, the certifications, and the skills, then we better incentivize people to come out and use their benefits. So then we can say, all right, not only am I offering you this amorphous benefit package that you may or may not use because you don't understand it, I'm putting it in context.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's such an underutilized thing. Like I love Coursera, I love LinkedIn Learning.
Mhm.
There's so many different things, and hey, use AI for good, right? Like use it to help you kind of plan your your study schedule, or to kind of piece it out into small bite-sized chunks instead of trying to dive in all at one time.
Exactly.
So, what a great way to kind of segue into like our next segment to talk about like AI and agentic systems. Um, because I think that's where like a lot of people feel both the opportunity and the anxiety.
Yes.
And you're working on Ask Army,
Hmm.
um, and it's a multi-agentic engagement platform, and you're out kind of speaking on agentic AI and AI for work. And so for someone who kind of, hears bots and portals,
Hmm.
what's really the most important takeaway here? Like how does someone, something like the Ask Army change how a soldier experiences HR compared to some of the more traditional systems and call centers?
Mhm. So what we're doing essentially with Ask Army is making a soldier engagement platform
Okay.
that they can really, come in and ask their questions. So they have a question about something in the HR space. They have a question about something in finance, or maybe it's medical. Our goal is to get all of our systems linked into this program so that we have multiple agents that can go and take actions on behalf of the soldier. So that's one of the things I do with a lot of our senior leaders, because a lot of them, it's not their subject matter expertise, so it's no fault of them,
Yeah.
but they're just like, AI is AI. They want to sprinkle some AI fairy dust on things, and that's going to fix everything. But it's like, okay, we have, your more traditional AI, your deep learning, your machine learning, your neural nets, which I love, but they're overly complex for a lot of the things that we want to do. And then we've introduced large language models that we can interact with, and the new hotness is agents and agentic AI.
Yes.
So I break it down for them. It's like, here's what it actually is. And it's kind of on a continuum of how much do you want the AI doing tasks for you. And so agents can either do a few small tasks, they can have workflows where they do a lot of tasks. The biggest impact we see is that with an agent, you don't need forms the same way. You can chat with the agent, and the agent will take all the data. It will pull data from other sources. You can have multiple agents working under the waterline, and they'll fill out those forms and send that information around for you. In the case of our soldiers, it's like, oh, we'll you get a reminder from Army Human Resources Command. You need to fill out your DD2, or your DD93, or your whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, if I have, my agentic AI, I can use ethical nudging, which basically is it'll send you a chat and
Ethical
say,
nudging. I love
right.
that. Like, okay, tell me more.
Okay. I'm not waiting for somebody else to send a reminder. I have everything clocked out on how often different data systems need to be updated. It can just send you a message and say, "Hey, you're such and such. Your benefits are due for an update. Is this still your main beneficiary?" Yes. Okay, done.
Ah,
No filling out the form. That's it. It's been updated. Or you have we validate our basic allowance for housing frequently. It's like, oh, you have orders
mhm.
saying that you're here. Have you moved? Have you completed your move? Would you like to validate your BAH for this new location? And yes, no filling out forms, no trying to get everything sent to the right person, no looking up, outdated phone numbers or emails on a website. We want it so that people can get into the system, ask a few questions, and if the agent can't do what it needs to do, it can come back and say, "Hey, oh, I can't do that function for you. Would you like me to book an appointment with your branch manager?" "Yes, please book me an appointment." "Okay, done." Agent does the task. So we're very excited about this capability. What I want it to do is just kind of go after the nug work, just
Yeah.
what we term like the toil that the soldier has to do. Stacks of paperwork are my favorite target for AI.
Oh, well, come over to the proposal industry
Yes. Mhm.
and see if we can do something about the acquisition process.
Yes.
Uh, because it is laced with paperwork.
Mhm.
And I'm just, like I my son is a sophomore now in high school, but I remember when we were in Virginia, and he went to Fairfax County Public Schools, and the beginning of the school year, the first 2 days of school were the biggest dreads of my entire life. Because could I possibly fill out more forms that ask for the same information? Like, how do you
Mhm.
not already like have this? And who is taking this paper, like from me? And then we moved to Texas, and I couldn't tell you the last time I filled out a form. And I think that they're
Mhm.
using a similar model out here, because I will get reminders like, hey, is this, like verify that this is still your correct address. And by the way, we've got him registered to take this bus. You're on this route based on your address,
Yep.
verify that. Like, to me, that is hugely more productive and makes it seem less drudgery.
Yes.
Um, you know, and so like, but on the flip side too, I do kind of worry, like, what are some of the triggers, or what are some of the catches to kind of find maybe the people who fall through the cracks? Like, maybe, I don't know, maybe they changed their emails, or they like moved, or have a different phone number. Like, how do you make sure that you're able to kind of, adequately reach out or connect with those people? Because some people aren't very good about making updates to certain
Mhm.
things when, certain changes in life happen.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out with all of our different systems. We
Yeah.
we had that issue majorly when we did our last email migration, because we migrated a majority of the emails from the mail.mil to army.mil, except we had our Corps of Engineers on a different email domain, our special operations were on a different domain. And we're finding out that, yeah, they didn't get email migration, and none of our systems are sending them the information they need for, permanent change of station moves and other things. So a lot of, I mean, I think I'm trying to do this without getting on. This is a favorite soapbox of mine, and I get on this lecture a lot. But the AI itself is useless without good underlying data.
Yeah.
So we have to build the data capture engines appropriately. If everything's going to rely on an email, we have to figure out how to update and validate everybody's emails. If it's going to rely on other systems, that system has to have a good database. And a lot of what we're doing in the people space is trying to figure out how to set good data standards, good data practices, good data governance. That has been something we've been talking about for a while, and we've sort of done in our little kind of niche enclaves. But this summer, I'm excited. We're bringing on a chief technology advisor who's going to have an office working both for the assistant secretary and for the G1. But that's part of his charter is he's got to figure out the data standards across the space, the systems, get a common operating picture for all the personnel data and all the personnel systems so that we know what needs to talk to each other for each of these functions.
Yeah. Isn't it funny? It's 2026 and we're still talking data governance challenges, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We'll be doing that for like another decade once, like, because I think data is just getting even more and more complex, right?
Yes.
Like before, it was like, where's the data coming from? Where are we storing it? How can it be clean? How can it be, like huge effort migrating it, like you said, right?
Right.
But the underlying thing has always been the governance of it. And I think that's like going to be the age long problem and question
Mm-hmm.
to try to help solve for decades to come. Because
I
now we
think
even have more of it. There's like even more
oh,
data
yeah.
now.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's kind of fun because the more complicated the technology gets, the more important the fundamentals get.
Yeah.
And I've had a similar conversation with my sister's a professor of communication at University of Louisville, and she has the same conversation with her students talking about social media. I mean, because the students come in, they're digital natives. They
Yeah.
understand how to use all the technology, but they really don't succeed until they layer in aspects of theory. So we're kind of doing the same thing when it comes to the data and AI space. Good aspects of data governance, aspects of critical thinking, aspects of logical steps of workflows. So we can bring people in with the technology, but if they don't have the foundations, they're not as effective.
Yeah. That's so true, and it's interesting because I try to communicate some of those elements to my 15-year-old. Um, and he's always been one to kind of skip things.
Hmm.
So he learned how to talk and he learned big words before he learned his ABCs. I swear to God, I thought he would never learn to read. And he couldn't sound out words to save his life, but he knew very complex, like high level,
Hmm.
like words and concepts. But I'm like, but dude, you got to go back to the fundamentals because so much kind of builds on that, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, you've the cart before the horse type of thing. You really do have to go back and reestablish a really good foundation before you
Hmm.
can, be successful down the line here. So
Yeah.
anyway, so moving to our last segment here, I always like to kind of tie up conversations and just kind of bring it back to industry here a little bit. And you've just told us that like the Army and the government's transitioning, you know, um, into a different space, and there's a lot of different things kind of involved in this: systems engineering, people analytics, and now your book kind of codifies this approach to like data driven talent. And I'd love for you to talk about your book a little bit more here too. But as you look towards industry, which I'm hoping when you hit retirement you come to the dark side and like work with us here in
Yes.
industry, is like what kind of problems are you really eager to solve next? And like how are you using your own data driven like talent mindset to choose kind of what's next for Kris?
hmm I think for me, I've been working as an internal consultant for the Army for the last 10 years on solving problems and bringing on technology. I'd like to keep doing more of the same. And I think that's been the most exciting thing about the people space. We're
Yeah,
all looking at similar things. We want to hire the best talent. We want to put that talent in the best role. We want our talent to be happy. We want them to feel impactful. We want them to be able to design their work in such a way that we're getting the most productivity and we're getting, appropriate work rest cycles, all the different things. It's a little bit different in the federal space and the Army space, just because we are in the federal space, it's not single entry. In the Army, it has been for a long time, although we're getting more creative with direct commission and the movement across our different components. But a lot of the challenges remain the same.
okay,
Um, that part is exciting to me just because, I've been going back and forth with industry trying to figure out best practices for so long. It's like I've got to see both sides of things. And I know that it's like a lot of the things that we've struggled with and have solved are things I can take to other organizations and solve. At the same time, I do want to reach back from the other side. I do want to go over to the industry side once I retire, and then send some of those lessons learned back to the folks who are coming up behind me. Like, hey guys, I'm figuring out. Hey, remember this problem we were working on? These guys have it figured out. Let me make a connection.
right,
So I think
right.
that's going to be fun.
Yeah. And so if you were to advise industry right now, like if you were to like help industry kind of understand what type of like solutions and what type of capabilities are going to be really attractive as
hmm
the Army kind of moves forward with this approach. Because I know a lot of our intellectual listeners are from industry. A lot of them are either working with the Army now or interested in like getting into this. And like you said, the challenges that the Army has is across all other agencies, right? It's not unique to the Army, but you're taking it and you're taking the solutions and an approach in a very innovative kind of way that is transferable,
hmm
like across different agencies and offices. So, what would be, like your recommendation and your advice, or some nuggets of tea leaves from Kris here?
Well, I think we're doing some very interesting things in the way we partner with industry. We are starting to bring in partnerships and to co-build a lot more. I
Okay,
think the thing that's exciting about how I'm seeing us do business is we're getting rid of as many linear models as we can. Instead, we're doing, I kind of break out the three horizon method as often as I can with my change plans. If you're not familiar with that, there's like the very near term, which is kind of tweaks early efficiencies. Let's build some prototypes and do some testing experimentation. The second horizon is more long term. I'm kicking off long term research projects and
okay,
things with a little bit more gravity. That third horizon is kind of your moonshots and your North Star guiding things, the things that we're eventually aiming for. But there's not a linear path that step A will get you to step B, get you to step C. You start a grab bag of different projects in that early segment and
right,
then kind of aim towards the foundations of that second segment. Everything just keeps kind of moving. Um, that said, I mean, I think we want partners that can help us with that, who aren't going to come in with, here's our linear poem. Like, well, we're not going to do step by step. We don't know if that's going to work. Things are going to shift mid stride, and we need to be able to pivot. Um, so I think the more we talk a good game on that. We have some people who are actually doing it, but I think we also have a lot of rigidity. So I think if industry partners are coming in ready to bring us in, ready to co-build with us, and ready to help, it's like let's take this nonlinear path to getting our systems improved and be ready to flex when we find new problems rather than kind of ramming one
yeah.
particular solution home. That's going to be key.
Well, I think that's a challenge on the government side because they're so much more risk averse, right? You know, government, I think by design, and I think in some instances it's a good thing that the government moves much slower than
hmm
industry. They need to be more cautious. The impacts of them making not a wrong, but a slightly incorrect, pivot this way, vice the other way, has larger ramifications than if you were
Mhm.
talking about like one industry or one company, like in particular. And so I don't always find it a bad thing that government is more risk averse.
Mhm.
But I think there's that, like you said, there's that delicate dance between innovation, fast solutions, and kind of taking a pie in the sky kind of like, walk with me on this vision. It's harder to kind of walk a vision when you're trying to control risk. And no one wants to be on the front page of the Washington Post, right? Like, just like, keep me out of the IG's office and keep me out
Oh,
of
no
the
kidding.
news, right? So,
Yeah.
like, it's a delicate balance that
Mhm.
you have to keep an eye on.
Yeah. But I think that's kind of where the iteration comes in and
True.
where the decision cycles come in. Because one of the things that we like to do is, show me a prototype, show me a mock-up, show me, let's take a product and use a very small segment of the population as a test subject and let's run it and see if it works. Because then we're minimizing risk. We're not coming in and doing what we used to do. It's like, hey, here's our requirement. We're going to throw that to industry and we're going to
Mhm.
sit back until you build us a complete solution. And then we bring it in and find out that like,
It's
30, 40,
obsolete.
50% of it doesn't work. Well, yeah, it's either obsolete or it doesn't work because we didn't co-build together and they didn't take into account this other old system that we use to
Yeah.
process the underlying data. Now when we're co-building, a lot of times industry will find that and go, hey, we can replace that workflow while we're at it. And then we say, great, we'll get rid of this thing that was probably built in COBOL a million years ago. And like one person knows how to operate it and build it in as a workflow in the new program.
Yeah. I think that's pivotal. That's such a critical point, is to, your term you're using is co-building, is that government can't just throw over the fence a set of requirements, and then, like, expect us to come back and solution towards that requirement, because I'm sorry, government, you may not actually be up on some of the better solutions. So I'm a huge advocate of being able to try to respond to a statement of objectives instead of a performance work statement or a scope of work, because it's less
Yeah.
rigid, right? It's
Yeah.
like, if you like, and I get it. There's some contracts that are very prescriptive. They're not
Mhm.
going to, change from the approach, and, and it's always going to be the same with maybe infusion of some technology, or, a new solution or whatever. But for the most part, if we're really talking innovation, we're really talking about things that are going to be modernizing and kind of taking, like the Army or the agency into like the next decade here, is you do need to kind of allow more creative exchanges, to explore like the art of the possibility,
Oh, yeah.
and that requires you to kind of shift your mode of operation a little bit than maybe what some of the acquisition folks and the program people are kind of used to.
Mhm. Yeah, it's gotta be much more of a partnership. I mean, we kind of I made my guys throw out the term vendors. It's like, we're not gonna say vendors, we're gonna call them industry partners because with as fast as everything is changing, it's not gonna be a buy a solution, implement solution, now it's
Yeah.
done. It's almost gotta be a subscription. And that really has been one of the biggest things I've tried to get senior leaders' minds around. It's like, no, it's not a one and done purchase for a software program. You're not just buying, like when we bought the package of software from the campus bookstore when we were going through college. Now it's like, we're going to buy a subscription because I want the app updates. I want the
Yes.
latest and greatest. I want the help desk. I want to
The
have
security
training.
features that are embedded
Right.
built in there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
No.
push out the bug fixes. Don't make me sit there and go, "Oh, I gotta wait for version whatever in, like, 2 years." Like,
Oh my
that doesn't make
God,
sense.
remember the CDs? Remember,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh.
Oh, yeah. "Oh, we got a new
Yes,
version of Windows. Let me go buy another CD," instead
right?
of,
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
we pushed your update."
yeah, exactly. There's some intellectual listeners right now like, "What CDs? What are," like, I'm sorry, you had to do you had to do
Oh,
what?
yeah. We never had to put the push cards in there, the note cards in there, but there was some startup that happened. There were
Yeah,
floppy disks.
that was pre me, the IBM cards, like, yeah,
Mhm.
like, thank God that was pre me. But anyways, um, so this kind of wraps up our conversation here today, and I want to always like close out with some key takeaways that, pivots are not about, like changing titles and butts and seats. They're literally changing about how systems see, value, and deploy people. And Kris, your career here, shows what happens when you design a movement towards, instead of like these static roles. The pace of change has really kind of outgrown this linear change model. I'm excited about it, and I think adaptive organizations with like built-in feedback loops. You test faster, you release faster, you're continuously trying to make updates. I think that leads to better and more consistent and more effective transformation.
Mhm.
But I think the underlying word, I think it's my word of the year, and it's the underlining word of this conversation, is just being pivot ready. Like, what does that
Yes.
look like? What does that mean? And that is not only, pivoting from position, but it's pivoting maybe from technologies, from solutions, from platforms. And I think that applies to both sides. It's
Mhm.
government and industry that needs to kind of really look at that. So, what are some of your last parting thoughts in our conversation here?
I'd say the way we're looking at things, we need a new kind of resiliency.
Okay.
We need more flexibility, more mobility. And that's internal mobility, external mobility. How do we identify the right talent we need for different aspects of a project? And how do we bring that in as quickly as possible? Or how do we bring it up if it's already existing within our organization? And I think for that, I'll do my shameless little plug, and my publisher will be happy with me.
Yes, please.
So I do have a couple frameworks in data driven talent management for that. But a lot of it is understanding that underlying data. Who are your people, not just how many of what type. The more we understand about who we have in that inventory, the more we can find the solution we need for different talent problems quickly. Because we've already got, hey, this person in here is 85% of the solution. I don't need to go hire some new external help. I have somebody here who already knows my business processes, who already is familiar with my organization's strategy, that I can just upskill a little bit and move into this role. So I think being able to do that when you have a large amount of ambiguity out there, when we have an unknown future, when we can make some predictions, but it's more of a probabilistic design than it
Yeah.
is, known points. Um, that gives us the ability to say, okay, I'm going this direction. And I've already got my fundamentals in place. I've got my foundations, and I can move from place to place and not, whiplash the entire organization. I can make those small pivots quicker and more frequent so that I can head towards proper direction rather than, making one giant change down the road and then having everybody think they're there and done, because it's no longer one and done change. It's constant.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Kris, I love our conversation here today, and what I appreciate the most is that you are not talking about pivots as a trend or a talking point, but you're living it, you're breathing it. You're working to kind of stress test it at like all levels. And if there's one consistent theme today, is that the future of work is all about, it's not about having this perfect plan, because
Mhm.
there is no perfection out there, but it's really kind of building systems, building leaders, building industry leaders and industry experts that can kind of sense change early,
Mhm.
moving with intention, and then kind of adjusting without losing any momentum, and at the end of the day losing that trust with each other. So I appreciate like you sharing your personal like personal perspectives on here, and what it looks like when it's kind of done, or like in this real world, instead of working in this very hypothetical, mathematical, like kind of model. And again, you're always welcome. I'm so glad that we finally were able to have you on our podcast here this day.
No, I'm very happy to be here, and it's a lot of fun. We touched on so many of my favorite topics, so thank you for that opportunity.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see you on the other side. So maybe we'll revisit this podcast after you've spent some time on the industry side. And for our intellectuals listening here today, whether you're in the government, GovCon, or industry, the takeaway is simple but not easy. Ask whether your organization is actually designed to adapt, or whether it's just very good at describing change. So
Mhm.
thanks to our intellectuals for listening. And remember, you have to think big to win big. Be an intellectual, and until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of possibilities.